start the recording. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Reach Alliance info session. Particularly, we are especially happy to welcome all of our UTM students, and we're happy to have our own researcher for UTM, Aisha Shafa. Aisha, I did it. I was trying to get it right. Aisha Shaka.
Yeah, perfect.
To our session here today, whom you will hear directly about the experience. My name is Moni, and I'm the research officer, and you'll get to hear from me in a bit. Just before we start I go over the agenda, a few housekeeping. One is live transcription is turned on, so you can turn that on for those that would require it. Second is there's a Q&A section in our webinar feature. So if you have questions throughout the process, feel free to submit your questions and we'll answer that along the way or at the very end when there's time. So with that, I will share my screen. And unfortunately, it is not showing me my slides. There are the technical details, but I just wanted to start by saying that we will have our introduction by Mary McLeod, and she'll go over the Reach Alliance process. And then we will be followed by then the details of the direct experience from students from Aisha. And then I will review the most boring part really, but most relevant for those that are interested in applying is the technical parts of the application process and the details of what exactly our recruitment process looks like. So with that, I finally have the slides here ready. Okay, so we've just gone over the agenda. And we'll get started here with the Reach Alliance history and background and our student researcher experience. And Mary McLeod, our executive director, and Reach Alum will share.
Great. Thank you so much, Moni. And thanks to everyone in the UTM community that's joining us this afternoon and that will see the recording after the fact. I think you'll hear from Aisha in a little bit about the experience from the perspective of a student researcher, but I can say some of our most accomplished Reach alum are coming from the UTM campus. So we really love to see you take an interest and see you as part of our researcher cohort. So we do hope that you'll consider applying. I just want to start the presentation by sharing a little bit about how Reach came to be and what really underpins the work that we do. So we are inspired by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and many of you are likely familiar with the UN SDGs, but if not, we encourage you to take a look at the SDG website. It'll give you a lot more detail about those 17 goals and how they came to be and why they're so important. And for us, it's really the idea that they are about leaving no one behind. They're quite unequivocal in their aspiration that all folks should be reached and no one should be excluded from the delivery of essential social services and programs. So this quote here: disaggregate the data and we find that our statistical national successes are masking moral and practical failures. People are left behind simply because they live in rural communities, urban slums, conflict zones, are part of Indigenous groups, are people living with disabilities, or they are girls. And the work that we do and the case study research that we conduct are really all around this question of who's being left behind and how do we ensure that delivery of social programs and services can actually reach these hard to reach populations. So Reach was founded in 2015 here at the University of Toronto. We are in partnership with the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth, so you can read a little bit more about the MasterCard Center at the hyperlink on the slides once Moni shares those. And as I mentioned, we are inspired by the SDGs. So if you haven't already, take a look at the SDG website. At the core, we are a student-driven, faculty-mentored research and leadership initiative. So all of our work is driven by students. There's a lot of incredible faculty that come around and support and mentor the projects and the process, but ultimately you're in the driver's seat here. We are looking to you for your guidance and your expertise in terms of things like how to select our case study topics. So which projects are most interesting and most relevant to you. And then throughout the research process, you're really driving a lot of that work. So you're doing the secondary research, the primary research, preparing that research ethics application, and then taking a real leadership role in the knowledge translation and mobilization aspect of the project, which we'll speak a bit more about later on. Our research has been featured in many leading outlets, so peer-reviewed publications, in the Lancet, the BMJ Global Health, the World Health Organization Bulletin, and several other outlets, as well as Stanford Social Innovation Review, the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star. We do place a great deal of emphasis on the knowledge translation mobilization. So in addition to the case study report that you would produce through the REACH experience, there's lots of opportunities and a lot of resources that we dedicate on the REACH staff side to support and enable that type of knowledge translation and mobilization of the research. So our vision, we've already spoken a bit about that, but investigating how to get important stuff to everyone everywhere. And important stuff is in brackets because there's no one type of program that we are interested in. We look at things that are a little bit more tangible, like getting money or cash transfers or vaccines delivered. We also look at things that are a little bit less tangible, such as access to justice, which is one of our recent case studies that you can see on our website, looking at the Nasdaq project, for example, in India, and access to justice for tea plantation workers. So we also are really quite focused on the idea that in order to pursue the full achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, we need to equip and empower the next generation of global leaders and really ensure and inspire that generational ownership over the Sustainable Development Goals. And REACH believes fundamentally that young people have a voice and a role to play and much to contribute to the discussion. And in fact, you'll see that at this week's REACH symposium, which we'll share a little bit more about, but you'll see REACH researchers sitting on the stage, the virtual stage that is, with CEOs, with deputy directors, with executive directors, because we do really believe that they are very well positioned to be in conversation. And we do create those opportunities for REACH researchers that go through the program. This is a summary of our REACH research up until last year. We've just recently actually published 7 new case studies that we will launch this week. But it really, and I know it is tricky to see, it's a small font there, but all of these case studies are available on the website to give you a number of examples that we've looked at to date. The reason we share the map with you is because it really helps demonstrate the geographic spread of our work. So we've done research in over 20 countries. We each year typically add a new country of research based on the student interest. So that's something that's an exciting opportunity for you all. If there's a region or part of the world that you're most interested in, you'll see those 3 institutional icons on this slide as well. And those are important because while we did start out as a U of T only based initiative, we now have partnerships with the University College London, Oxford, and Tec de Monterrey in Mexico. And we're currently building out partnerships with universities in Africa, Asia, and Australia as well. So when you become part of the REACH Alliance network, you immediately are entering a global group of like-minded peers and top faculty from some of the world's leading organizations and institutions that are all focused on the question, how do we reach hardest to reach populations with essential goods and services? So it immediately builds out your professional network in a way that I believe is quite unparalleled here at the University of Toronto. This is a quick snapshot of our active faculty mentors, so those that are currently mentoring REACH research teams this year. As you can see, we have people coming from law, from social work, from public health, engineering, business, geography, political science, medicine, the list goes on. The point of this slide is to demonstrate that the folks that are involved in mentoring the REACH research teams are truly some of the university's foremost scholars in their discipline. You have a very unique opportunity to work with university professors, directors, chairs of departments, and others that are really at the fore of their research area and their discipline. So it is certainly a special opportunity in the sense that you do get to work in a small group setting with people like those listed here on the screen. And we're always building out the the group of mentors. So there'll be some new and exciting faces to add to this list next year. Equity, diversity, and inclusion underpins all of the work that we do here at the REACH Alliance. actually, I guess 2 years ago now, we engaged in a very intensely consultative process with the Anti-Racism and Cultural Diversity Office. They facilitated for us a series of workshops with our staff, our researchers, our alumni, and our faculty mentors, and as well as some additional staff that we work with to develop a equity, diversity, and inclusion charter. And the link for that is at the bottom of your screen. And we encourage you to take a look at that. There you'll see the principles and the commitments that we have agreed to as a community. And certainly, our communications team, Moni, myself, and all of our faculty mentors, as well as the researchers and alumni, spend a lot of time thinking about how to ensure that we are adhering to those commitments and principles outlined in the charter. So please do take a look at that as well. The program overview, I will speak to relatively quickly because I think Aisha is probably the best positioned person on this panel to tell you a little bit about what that experience looks like. But it is a 12 to 16 month commitment from sort of recruitment and onboarding all the way through to the case study production period. Faculty mentors at the outset support student researchers in identifying case study topics. We get a lot of questions about how the case studies are selected, and the answer is by the students. Certainly, there are some guidelines that we offer, and the mentors, the faculty mentors, and your peers in the REACH cohort provide a lot of great input and lines of questioning, but ultimately it's you that would be coming up with the case studies that you think are most interesting, and it's up to you to make a case for why REACH should take that on and put its full resources behind a particular topic. We'll be selecting 8 new case studies this coming year, just for reference. The research is both secondary and primary. Secondary, you've all done before. It's literature reviews. Primary sometimes is a new opportunity for REACH researchers to be a part of. So this is actually conducting qualitative interviews with key informants in the field. So over the past couple of years, we've unfortunately had to do that remotely because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I will say we are cautiously optimistic and hopeful that perhaps we could be in the field next year, but we do very much adhere to the University of Toronto's guidelines, and thus, we'll be following that closely. But regardless, rest assured, there is an opportunity to do primary research, regardless of whether it's virtual or in person. The experience culminates with the writing of a case study report. This is something that you would co-author with 3 other research students on your team, as well as your faculty mentor. And again, you can see all of the examples on our website of past case study reports, but it's something that's professionally produced. There's a copy editor, there's a designer engaged. It's something that you can feel really quite proud of, and certainly include, in conversation in terms of job interviews and ongoing work that you may be doing at the university. But it's a really tight deliverable that I think encapsulates well your experience over the 1 to 1.5 years that you're a part of the program. It's the only required deliverable of the REACH experience, but we do like to highlight the opportunity for knowledge translation deliverables that you and your team and your mentor have the opportunity to kind of work on after the case study report is produced. So we have a number of communication professionals on the REACH Alliance staff, as well as obviously being quite connected with the Monk Schools Global Affairs and Public Policy team. There are ways in which you can engage in op-eds, infographics, peer-reviewed publications, videos, etc. So there's a lot of examples on our website, but just to say there, if you're interested in knowledge translation mobilization and you're interested in your research having an impact, then REACH is certainly something that I would encourage you to think about in terms of an opportunity to engage in. Now, I'll just quickly speak to 3 pieces of the program that run in parallel or tandem to the research experience itself. One is team performance coaching. So each of our research teams is paired with a professional performance coach at the beginning of the year. And that performance coach works with the team throughout the course of their time in the REACH Alliance. The aim is really to drive both your individual performance, but as well your unit capacity, so your team's research and output capacity. What we know is that we, through REACH, are able to recruit some of the world's top students, and certainly the top students here at the University of Toronto. Not everyone has experience working effectively with perhaps a PhD student or someone in business or engineering or public health. And so we find the performance coaching really helps facilitate that engagement and those meaningful collaborations in a way that allows you to gain the most through the experience in terms of skills and experience, and as well allows you and your team to produce really high quality deliverables and outputs at the end. I'm sure Aisha will speak a little bit to her experience with the coaching. The skills development series is something that is offered typically on a monthly basis, where we bring in our faculty mentors as well as other experts and consultants in the field. So just for example, last week we brought in a TEDx coach, TEDx speaker coach, and he did a workshop with our researchers about how to effectively communicate their insights in interview settings, in networking settings, and at conferences, for example. We all see that the students are really the experts and they own this information, but sometimes it can be hard and daunting to actually have a conversation and translate that in an interview setting, for example. So our goal here is to ensure that the students that come through the REACH experience are equipped and poised for positions of leadership and impact. And we do, take feedback from researchers about different things that they'd like to learn and skills they'd like to develop. But we have put in over the last 5 or 6 years quite a bit of energy to determine what those workshops could look like in order for students to get the most out of the experience. Finally, I'll just quickly mention the alumni network. As I've highlighted, you would be joining a cohort of students at Oxford, the University College London, Tec de Monterrey in Mexico, and other universities around the world. So you become part of a community that is much greater than the University of Toronto. In fact, it is a global community of leaders that are driving change around the world. You would gain access to an exclusive alumni portal only for REACH Alliance researchers, where we share exclusive job and event opportunities, as well as other information that we think is salient and pertinent to the students that participate in REACH. There's also an AI-enabled networking platform that we are just piloting now that would allow you to facilitate connection, again, with students at the University of Toronto, but also at the partner university. So building this connection and this global network is something that is really of the utmost priority to us. And we do feel like our alumni truly are our greatest asset. And we spend a lot of time and energy thinking about how to position you all for impact. This slide is actually just a visual representation of the detail I've shared previously, but just to quickly give you a sense for the temporal sequence of activity. At the moment, we are, of course, recruiting. Our recruitment closes on Sunday, so there's still lots of time for you to prepare your application, and Moni's going to share some great tips on how to do that. But we will be onboarding students sort of June, July, and then throughout the summer, there is a pitching process that would happen. In September, the final 8 case studies are selected and the student research teams are paired with their faculty mentor and their performance coach so that you can begin to start that secondary desk research and get your research ethics application ready to go. Once your research ethics application is prepared, then you begin the primary research. And that again is looking like field interviews with folks that are responsible for the implementation of programs. So we again are looking at how and why is something successful. So we need you out there speaking to the people that are delivering these programs so that you can glean those key insights and bring them back to the team and allow us to help kind of create a platform for that information to be disseminated broadly. As I mentioned, the process does culminate with the case study report. And then there are, as I also mentioned, a number of opportunities for you to continue engaging with the research and really getting the word out. And again, really with that focus of positioning the research for impact. We don't do research for the sake of research here. This isn't a PhD by any stretch. This is really implementation science. How can we get this information into the hands of folks that can actually do something with it? My last slide is, actually, I guess I have 2 slides. My second last slide is knowledge translation and impact. Again, this is just a visual representation of that opportunity that I've just shared, just to give you a couple of examples. So we've got the BMJ Global Health article that was produced by one of our teams this year. A group of alumni wrote for the Stanford Social Innovation Review on cash transfers. We've got an op-ed here on the far right that was placed in the Hill Times because that research team was particularly interested in targeting policymakers and especially around long-term care facilities and COVID and how we can improve the situation. So just to say again, there are lots of opportunities. Your research, because of the rigor that is underpinning the process, is extremely well positioned for all of these different channels. So if that is something you're passionate about, you have come to the right place. Amazing. And I think, yeah, there's one other slide. I know there's slightly, that's totally fine, Moni. The one last thing I'll say is about the REACH Symposium. So that's coming up on Thursday and Friday of this week. And I'm actually just going to quickly share the link in the chat. If you haven't already seen information about the event, we encourage you to take a look. And if you're interested, register. It is going to be a really I think, special opportunity for you to see how our research is actually positioned among key stakeholders and leaders from around the world. But then I think more importantly, to see how the student researchers do play a leadership role and are featured as key speakers at this event. It's something that I think is quite impactful. And for most students that go through the program, it's often cited as sort of the most unique aspect of their engagement is this opportunity to participate in the REACH Symposium. So you'll see that slide in a few minutes, but I'll just give you a quick heads up about that. And then Aisha, I'd love to just take the moment now to introduce you, and I'm so thrilled that we've got you here. There we go. So we're so thrilled that we've got you here to speak really to the student experience, because I think that's really ultimately the most important thing. How has it been for you to be a researcher, and especially representing UTM? You know, there's not very many UTM students that are part of the REACH cohort. And so we're just so thrilled and honored that you are part of our cohort, and would love to hear you share a bit about that with other prospective UTM applicants.
Thanks, Marin. Thanks to both Moni and Marin for letting me speak to you all today. I'm really excited to talk about my REACH experience. I think I'll just start with some background about myself, though. So I'm in my 5th year of political science at UTM. So fingers crossed, graduating this spring. And I actually started my degree in commerce and then switched to political science. And I find that like those interests or that intersection influences a lot of my interests. So my previous work experience was as a customer experience intern at RBC, and basically that kind of combined. I worked jointly with the user design team as well as the customer success team. And then while I was working on REACH, I also was working at the Social Innovation Fellowship, and we learned a lot about impact investing, social innovation kind of basics. And so that is kind of my background, which primarily was in like tech startups and I guess social innovation. But on the next slide, what influenced me to apply to REACH was that at the time I was really interested in global development, but I found careers to be kind of inaccessible. Like they're either opportunities that are abroad, they're hyper competitive, and if you don't have any connections or knowledge of the space, it was really hard to kind of get a foot in. And so I was really excited when I heard about REACH. And then the second thing is through my work experiences, I knew that I really liked working on long-term projects where I can kind of like tinker around, implement feedback, and really take the time to produce like a work that I'm proud of. And so I say this because I think like while we go through our presentation, I would recommend for you to think about like what resonates with you and think about the outputs or like the outcomes that you hope to get with REACH. And I think that will improve your application a lot. And I'll touch back on this at the end. But yeah. Yeah, so our case study looks at agriculture in India. And at a very high level, essentially, we're looking at a company called Digital Green, and they aim to get information to smallholder farmers who are often the most poor. They live in rural circumstances, and they often don't have a lot of resources. So Digital Green tries to get them information that can help them improve their yields, lower their cost, and improve their efficiency with the aim of improving their livelihoods. So you can imagine as a farmer, if you don't have like a predictable yield, it not only impacts your income, but also like how you get your food. So it's a really interesting intervention. This is my lovely, lovely team that we're working with. There's Zainab, who's in her 3rd year of mechanical engineering. She's actually doing her professional experience year right now, so she's working full time. And there's Olivia, who's doing her master's in public health, and then myself in political science. And I hope that that just shows you like the variety of backgrounds we have in REACH and like how really multidisciplinary the teams are. We also have 2 co-mentors, faculty co-mentors, and they're both in engineering. It's a really great relationship that you build with them. That's not like your typical student-teacher relationship. As Marian mentioned, like it's a really student-led project. So even when we do want them, just like tell us how to do this, they'll encourage us to actually like find the solution ourselves and like really mentor us through that process, which has been really like a great learning experience. And then our team coach. So each team is assigned their own team performance coach, as Marian mentioned, and Nicole was our coach. And as a team, like our team works so well together, and we have to give like so much credit to Nicole because she really taught us how to work well together. Next slide. Yeah, so our research question, like at a basic level, is how does digital green promote gender equity and women's inclusion in traditionally male-dominated sectors of agriculture? Some of like the lens or topics that we kind of focused in on is ICT 4D, which means information and communication technologies for development. So this would be asking questions like, how do you reduce the digital divide in this case? How do factors like digital literacy, regular literacy, and access to phones impact people's ability to engage with technologies? Gender equality. So we're really looking at like, what does gender empowerment mean in this very specific context of agriculture in India? And then social behavior change. How does digital grain actually like build trust in communities? How do they incentivize farmers to actually like listen to the advice? And so all this is to say, like, I put this here because it shows you like this is what our group found interesting about the project, and this is the direction that we chose to take it in. But like you'll hear Moni and Marin mention a lot that it's a student-driven project, and that is like so true. So if you start with the pitching process, you pick your own case study, you rank which case study you want to work at later down in the process, and then even when you're on a team, you have your case study topic, you can really take it any direction you want as long as it's within the context of the hardest to reach. And then so my reach experience, I think, was shaped mainly by these 6 factors. There's a lot of other things, but these are kind of like the top highlights, I guess. So the first thing would be multidisciplinary teams. I love working with Zainab and Olivia because like we can read the same paper and they'll come up with completely different things that I hadn't even talked about. They also really value my opinion as well, which just feels nice because I think like if you're in classes with everyone and you kind of have the same knowledge, you don't get to like reap the value of what you learn. And so it's just been nice having that like validation. Another is our team performance coach. I think like there's so many circumstances where you have to work in teams. And I, for one, will be like the first to say that I previously had definitely worked in teams where I'm like, I don't think I like working in teams, but you learn how to manage teams even when like there's circumstances where, you know, they might not work and you make them work. And so I think overcoming those challenges has been really helpful. Faculty mentors and reach support staff. If anything in the process seems like daunting to you, it also during like there's always someone who you can go to for help, whether it's your faculty mentors, your coach, or the reach staff who are so helpful. You always know like where to direct your questions to, and like no matter what question you have, there's someone there to help you answer it or answer it. The next thing would be the skills development workshops. So these ranged from research topics, which is like how to incorporate cartography into your research, or storytelling through your research. But we also touched on things like Mary mentioned, the confidence building workshop recently, or like, speaking with confidence and how to get your like knowledge translation skills. I think those were some of my favorites. But these are also an opportunity for you to meet with your cohort, which is really nice. They're offered in a hybrid fashion. So you can even meet the cohort in Oxford and Tech de Monterey as well. And then the next thing is career coaching. You get a few career skills like development workshops, and then you also get one-to-one career coaching, which has been really helpful for me as someone who's graduating. And then as Marin spoke to, like the alumni network is so strong. I feel like everyone loves Reach so much that like they always want to get back to it, which was one of the first thing I noticed is like how involved the alumni are. And even networking opportunities like the symposium, there's like really great industry professionals. In addition, you're working with like top leading faculty at the University of Toronto. So all around, there's always really amazing and insightful people. So my main takeaways, even though I'm not fully completed my Reach experience yet, is one, learning how to optimize teamwork. Again, like our team coach taught us things like how to give and receive feedback, how to solve conflicts and build infrastructure so that you don't have conflict, which I think is going to help me a lot in my professional career. We're leading a research project from start to finish, so that includes things like getting research and ethics approval, it also, like, I do interviews and I have like a bit of experience where I have lots of things to talk about, but my interviewers always want to talk about like reach a lot just because like it's such a unique experience. And so I think you'll find that as well. Three, meaningful work to produce actionable insights. A lot of this differs from the coursework because you're actually aimed at like trying to get your research applied in and actually make some positive change in the world. So after your case study, you can even publish articles and peer-reviewed things, and then even speak and present it to industry professionals. The last thing would be you get to build a powerful and diverse network of people. I hadn't previously considered like research as a kind of career path, but that was something that I found really interesting during my time at Reach. And so like through Reach, I've been able to gain connections that would allow me to work on other research projects over the summer. And I think that this is like a test to how powerful the network is. So my advice if you're applying would be to firstly demonstrate the values that Reach is looking for. If you go on the Reach website, there, and I think also during this presentation, there's a list of kind of values, and I do this in my job search as well, but if they say like we require ABC, I'll make sure to demonstrate that I can do like ABC in my application. And so same here, I think you really want to show like how you have exemplified those values when you're answering the questions. The next thing would be to share your story and leverage your unique background. I think like I had a like rocky kind of university life, but I really excelled in my like work experiences. And so I was able to show kind of like growth and like craft a narrative that, oh, I did learn something through these experiences. And then lastly, I think this goes back to the first point that I made at the beginning. If you think about what you want out of the experience, I think it'll already take your answers one step farther because you're already thinking about the impact that you want to have. And then my last parting advice is for those of you in the audience who were just like me and perhaps thought like this is very daunting and I don't think that I would like fit in or should apply. And my advice is just like you don't have to tick all the boxes right away. As long as you have like a dedication and a willingness to learn, I think those are the most important things. So I would encourage you to just apply.
I could not say it better myself. Thank you, Aisha, for your presentation. She's also left her contacts to, if you want to reach out to her particularly or just look up her experiences. I'll share these in a follow-up email as well. So to make it less daunting, the application process, let me go through some of the details so that there's clarity. So, so I am working with the team here at the Reach Alliance as a research officer. So I oversee the programming at our U of T teams particularly, but as well as our global partners and the skills development workshop series. So one of the questions is that came in is, what is the eligibility? And so the only eligibility that we had is that you have to be a registered student in the next coming academic year. So that's fall term and winter term. And so that could be any level, but as long as you are a student, undergrad, graduate, or PhD, anyone can apply. And part of the reason is as students, you have access to the university resources in order to do research. So that is unfortunately eligibility. And so if anyone is an undergrad and they're graduating in June, don't worry, maybe if you come back to U of T as a graduate student, or if you come back as a PhD student, the opportunity will be here for you. So at any point in time, that is the only eligibility. So part of what I should refer to is what are the traits that we're looking for in an ideal candidate? And we are an interdisciplinary program, so we're not looking for field specific traits. We are looking for traits and competencies that are known to develop global citizenship and also future ready work skills. So these skills are important in any setting, but particularly because we, one, are not an academic program, we are a co-curricular program that has a rigor of actually doing an academic research project, but we're looking for traits that balance out, have a baseline of skills to manage your academic program. So we don't want your grades to, to be affected poorly by taking on this opportunity. So people that can prioritize is it just a given opportunity or trait that we're looking for. We're looking for global citizenship, anyone that wants to learn more about global challenges, be part of the development sector, but maybe necessarily not directly connected. We're looking for team players and collaborators. So this is not group work, like group study work, where you do a paper and you just divide and conquer. This is actually teamwork, which is very different thinking around how, as a team, you collaborate together to share the task at hand. So that's where coaches come in. And so anyone that's willing to like really learn how to work in a team effectively, we're looking for those. We're looking for effective communicators, as that's a skill for any successful person in any setting, but particularly because this does involve so many people, we need people that are able to communicate and willing to grow in that skill set. Creative and strategic thinker, there will be many obstacles and there will be many decision points to make. And so we're looking for people that won't be stumped by them, but will really take on the opportunity to look at every challenge with excitement and energy and willing to think outside the box. And part of that is lifelong learners. So as Aisha referred, sometimes you will have a case study that is completely outside. If you're a business student, you may be doing a project on an engineering solar powered, device or vaccine delivery in public health, and it may be totally unrelated, but part of that will be a very steep learning curve. And so it is people that really enjoy learning for the sake of learning. And so we really would welcome people that are lifelong learners. And lastly, it's an action-oriented project because we're flipping the paradigm of academia in which the students are leading and they're the principal PIs, principal investigators on this research, and the mentors and the faculty are there to support and guide. So this really requires students that are willing to take action and willing to take ownership of a project and do what's necessary. So all of these are traits are described in detail on our website. And these are all cross-cutting traits and applicable to any situation. So what is the application process? There's an online form that when you go, you'll see the apply now button on our website, and it'll take you to a Microsoft online form. And there will be some background questions, and then there will be 4 short answer questions with a word limit. And those 4 questions refer to kind of getting to know more of your experience in research, getting to know more about your experience of being outside of your comfort zone, taking initiative, and learning more about your motivation of why you're attracted to reach, to get a chance to know, and as Aisha insinuated too, as well as knowing what do you want out of the experience and seeing how that aligns with what the opportunity presents. And then after that, you'll be asked to submit required documents in a single PDF. And the required documents are the following 4. One is your resume, 2 pages max, just a review of what you've done and opportunities you've been part of. The second is your unofficial U of T transcript. So print, you can get it on, I think on a print screen from Acorn. And so if you're a first-year student and you don't have that long of a history, and there's no grades yet, that's fine. Just print whatever you can of your official U of T, and then you can include your previous university transcripts if that's helpful to explain. Because the third document that we require is an annotated transcript. So this is different from your transcript in that you get to tell the story of how you chose your courses, what you learned from the courses, and what your journey has been. And so I think where Aisha referred to like a rocky start and then finding a direction, and this is the opportunity to tell those stories, because your grades, we know, don't tell the whole story and the types of courses you took. So we love this section of our application because this is the opportunity where you can tell us who you are, what your journey has been, and how this aligns. And so this is that place, the annotated transcript. So You can do that individually with 5 courses, or you can do it collectively if there's a series of courses, what your interests are, and get to know you better. And then the last but new requirement is a co-curricular activity list. We're asking people to send us what you're already committed to next year. It just helps us to know the vast kind of array of activities you're part of, and it goes part of our assessment process. So the deadline is a Sunday, right before midnight. You can submit your applications online. So make sure you press submit button before 11:59, otherwise it closes. One practical application is you need to apply in one session, so keep your browser open and you can fill out the application along the way and then upload your file and hit submit. And you should get an email of all your answers that you're submitted, so that you know that your application was submitted to us successfully. And the other thing to note is, which is less applicable now, is that we're assessing applications from the time it opened to closing. So we will assess it right until receive all the applications that we receive on Sunday. Now, after you submit your application, you will be asked to participate in an optional student equity survey. Admission decisions are not related at all on this, based on the answers to the survey, and this is optional. However, we do highly recommend all of the applicants to complete this survey, as the data really helps assess our effectiveness in our initiatives in reaching the diversity of our cohort, and this is in alignment. It looks very similar to the U of T student equity survey. So we've closely aligned it so that we can be able to compare across. But it is part of our equity, diversity, and inclusion charter, and our value in it is to first understand who is applying and are we able to and to assess the diversity of our cohort. So once it's submitted, you will receive a response by May 13th is what the website says. So you'll get an answer of whether you're moving on to the next part of the process. So the next part will be up to 3 rounds of interviews. So from May to June, we are doing interviews for 3 rounds, and we're asking people to be available on Zoom to participate for rounds 1 and 2. And then round 3 has a potential to be in person because it's a group discussion. Now that U of T is opening it up, we may be able to do it in person. So the details of all of these will be sent in an email for those successful applicants. And the assessment panel includes not just staff, but also alumni and faculty mentors. So there's at least 2 people that participate in the panels. And then by the end of June, we hope to have the final 32 researchers selected. And you can see the critical pathway afterwards of when the actual REACH program for the next cohort will begin in July, August. Our orientation sessions, training camps, and then when the research process begins in the academic school year. So you can learn more about kind of what happens once selected on our website. There's a section on the REACH process to help you get acquainted and not be kind of caught off guard. And then we'll take a question and answer here. I don't see any questions that have come through. And here's our contact information. So I'll give it a chance if anyone has questions right now to submit them in the chat or ask in person. You can turn on your mics if you want, and I'll stop sharing my screen. And one question that I'll start that we have frequently asked is, what is the time commitment that one should expect to give to participate in REACH? And because this is a co-curricular activity, it's not a course, how much time should people, how much time does it require? So Aisha, I'll leave it up to you. I always refer to students because it all depends. So how would you answer that question for those that are kind of wondering, how much time in my schedule is this going to take?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say it varies depending on 2 factors. And one is just, so the first one would be, there's kind of like periods of like, a deadline's coming soon. So you have to kind of like do a lot more work in some weeks. I would say, and then the second factor would be like how your team chooses to like divide things up. So we had two people in our team who were graduating this year, and so towards the end of the semester, we just decided like we're not gonna work too much. We're gonna prepare beforehand and then have time afterwards. So you do have the flexibility. I would say though that we have two team meetings a week typically at the moment. So those were 1 hour each. And then one meeting with our faculty mentor biweekly. So that's around 2 to 3 hours per week. And then outside of that, you have some skills development workshops, which are kind of biweekly. So I would say around like 5 hours, but that is kind of like subject to change based on like what your team agrees on and what kind of stage you're in the research project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it totally depends on the team, but typically it can be up to 10 hours,
Yeah.
especially during
Yeah.
really busy times in the RB application, and like there's time sensitive deadlines. And other times it can kind of, you're in a waiting period for RB, so you can prep in advance, and those are a little bit less intense. So it ebbs and flows with the process, as we show visually of kind of the different processes. But some people have said it's like adding a course, in terms of all the pre-work that you got to do and prepping for the meetings and the different types of meetings, and in terms of all the opportunities that is part of the REACH program. We do have skills development workshop series. We do have career offboarding and coaching that you can participate. That's optional. So depending on how much time you want to invest in REACH is what you will get back. So that is one of the things about REACH, is that there is a wide array, and depending on the level that you really want to take advantage of everything, you can also informally connect within our network and set up meetings to meet with alumni or other researchers and other faculty mentors that may be, aligned and you're interested in learning more about the work. So it all depends, but we would say it can go from like 5 to 10 on a typical, it averages out, but that is one of the ways to describe it. And that's why teamwork is important, because you share the load. And so we understand that teams can communicate in advance when they're available and not available. And that's when other team members can contribute more and less. And so it's what happens in teams. One final question maybe we can end on is, we had it in our last session, is what is your most memorable non-research experience you've had, Aisha?
So we had a Christmas social, which was or like holiday social near the winter holidays. And that was really memorable because it was the first time we were able to meet a lot of the people. There was one in the summer, but I wasn't in Toronto, so it was my first time meeting a lot of the cohort in person. And I just remember being like very in awe of the types of people who were in the room. There was like a lot of people from MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth. There was really accomplished alumni, and it was just like everyone was so nice. And I think part of like everyone in REACH just being like very wonderful is a product of them being there because they want to be there. And so yeah, I really enjoyed the like social aspects of it as well.
And I guess that's one of the difference too, is that we are meeting in person. We've been doing everything hybrid. We know that, and we'll do that into the future too, because we've got international students coming from, ECL and Tech joining our skills development workshop online. But I know, as UTM students, you're like, is everything in person? And I guess, Aisha, you can answer that. How difficult is it? I know that we're St. George campus focused sometimes at U of T, but so I totally hear our fellow other campuses that are on each side, on the east and west side. So Aisha, how did you manage as a UTM student, kind of working with students that are on St. George campus and
For sure. I think like COVID definitely started kind of working in your favor with everything like being online, but as things like transition to in person as well, I think like the kind of challenge of it definitely is worth it by the experience that you get out of it. So you might have to put in a bit more attention into like planning your commute times and like making sure that you can kind of like maybe have a reading while you sit on the bus. There's the UTM shuttle, which I live closer to the subway, so sometimes I don't use it, but it's very convenient as well, and it operates like consistently. on a like consistent schedule, which is really nice. But I think, yeah, there's a lot of hybrid stuff, and then even when things are in person, I think it's worth the like travel to attend.
Mhm. Yeah, and I will say that we always, with team building, it's always better in person. You get to know people better, and also learning. And I know that we've had some students who their faculties are still online, but they choose still to come on campus and do our skills development workshop series in person because they enjoy being in person and learning together and hearing the laughter in the room. Zoom is very lonely and isolating. So we do offer in person for those that are interested to come in, but you will be able to participate online, especially for our skills development workshop series and our larger events. But we do value and so if you want to feel like you're St. George campus student, you can join Reach because our home is in Monk. So unfortunately, we can't move our home base, but there's great reason to come and make the trip to St. George. Yeah. Okay, well, I think we're going to leave it to that. We don't seem to have any burning questions from the audience. So I have a feeling that you covered all your bases, Aisha, and really motivated this group to apply. And we really would love to continue to have more UTM students like Aisha to come and participate. We know there's so many great programs out at UTM that is related to sustainability and management and all sorts of interdisciplinary aspects to really contribute to the Reach Alliance and the case study work. So we look forward to receiving your applications. And for any more questions after the fact, you're always free to get in touch with us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Aisha, for sharing your experiences. We always value the work of all of our researchers, not just to the research process, but to the community building and to the giving back to future researchers. So thank you.
Yeah.
We'll see you.